2020 happened, and that was like a big turning point for me. I actually got diagnosed with depression in that year. It was a pretty hectic year for me. Apprenticeship is quite high intensity. Like, you start your apprenticeship and you constantly got to meet deadlines, and then once you get qualified, it's what's next, site manager, foreman. So the progression is constantly there, and that was that was how I tracked. I think it took me just over 3 years to do my apprenticeship, and quickly was running jobs, and quickly into a site foreman / project manager of bigger jobs, but also mainly littler jobs. And it was just quite intense, and you don't get any learning or training along the way. You're just like, oh, this is the title now, this is the van, this is the guys you got to work with. And so the pressure kind of just got to me. I like to think I'm quite a high achiever, so I want to be successful. I want to be the best. That's always been my mentality, and do everything I can to do that. And so I just got to a point where I just couldn't. And then between there and the end of the years, when I was kind of like, I need to change.
What is success to you?
I think it was a learn to love it experience.
And there's always pitfalls that you can fall in, but then you've got no one else to blame but yourself.
Number one thing if you're struggling is to catch up with people about it. Hey guys, Better Builder Apprentice is brought to you by our friends at Builders Academy. Builders Academy is New Zealand's newest apprentice provider, and they definitely here to shake things up. Why use Builders Academy? Well, first of all, they're just as good as the other guys, but on top of that, they will come on site every 6 to 8 weeks. Yeah, that's quite a lot, right? That means that your apprentices will be a lot more engaged, and they'll have to learn a lot less modules in between trainer visits. Secondly, they are backed by master builders. And thirdly, they have an experienced and motivated team that knows the industry inside and out. In fact, most of them are ex-chippies. Just go to buildersacademy.co.nz. Paul, thank you for coming on the podcast.
No, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, it's cool. We just kept talking off air, and we were like, we should probably get this podcast going because we could just keep yarning about all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
So you're the workplace apprenticeship educator for Builders Academy. I always get that wrong. I always give it a different variation of that name. And so, yeah, I want to hear a little bit about your background. The cool thing about Builders Academy trainers is, like, I think if it's not 100, it's like 90% of all the educators are all ex-builders. Yeah. So it's not just like theory dudes, It's actually people that been in the game, know what they're talking about. So I want to hear a bit about your background. So before we sort of dive into it, tell me a little bit of, where did you grow up? What was your sort of childhood like? What was the vibe when you were younger? How old are you now?
30, almost 32.
32.
20, I'll take the 20s. Definitely feeling older than 32 as well.
Yeah, so you're 32, so you're old, like me. What was your upbringing like? Where did you grow up?
Yeah, so I grew up in Whangarei, and from a family, there's 7 kids. Both
wow.
Same mum and dad. Yeah, it was pretty full on.
What number were you?
5, and there's a 5-year gap between me and my older sister. So yeah, it's a bit of they joked around, or my siblings joked around, that I was adopted, and that was a great experience. And that I was also a mistake. So, but we'll just roll with it. But apparently I wasn't. I was a gift. So,
yeah. Well, it can't be both. Which am I? Am I a mistake or am I adopted?
It depends who you talk to, right? Yeah. Could be multiple. But no, it was good. Good upbringing. Love being part of a big family. Obviously, lots of drama, lots of chaos that goes on. They've got 2 younger siblings underneath me. And yeah, growing up there, up in Northland, has been pretty cool. Close to the beaches. They reckon Whangarei is the city of 100 beaches. So
yeah, that is pretty cool.
I don't know. I've seen a sign there somewhere saying that, but
yeah,
whether that's true, I don't know. But there's a lot of beaches around, so you pick for choice. So yeah, no, it's pretty cool.
Oh, that's cool. I went to boarding school with I went to school in Auckland, but a lot of people from Whangarei. Yeah. And so I spent a lot of time up there when I was at school, and it was cool. There's so many spots you can go. You can go down all the way down Lang's Beach, and you can go there's beaches everywhere, and it's kind of cool farming. A lot of the guys were farmers. Yeah. Their dads were farmers. So it's very cool. Okay, so big fans. And what's the spread? So how old is you? What's the gap between your oldest and your younger sibling?
I think it's about 20-ish years.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I don't like. We were talking off year about kids, and I don't know why mum and dad wanted to have that many kids.
Were you part of like a commune or something?
No.
Like a cult?
No, definitely not. No. A Christian family, but like I don't know. I guess contraception was not a thing that they wanted to
Heard of.
Yeah, or use. It's definitely around, but just probably not. Yeah, something they like to use, or I don't know.
It's cool though. Like I've got 4 kids, so I can say firsthand it's fun.
Yeah,
I mean, from a parent's perspective, it's fun having like a big family, and it's chaos, and siblings become friends, and like you're all kind of there helping each other, and like it's not all about you, right, Paul? Like you probably didn't grow up being all about you.
No, yeah, and honestly, having to adapt to that, and I actually learned later on in life that like I'm so grateful for the upbringing I had, and I think watching, because dad worked a lot, and mum had to work as well, and at times dad had 2 jobs. He was a butcher, and he also worked at like the Northern Bakery in the night. So so it was pretty hectic, and he was pretty flat out. But he showed me what work ethic is, and always going to be grateful for that. That like
example,
example, and how he modelled that. And I think like that's transitioned into my life. And I think if you look at all of us kids, I think we all have an element of that. So like big ups to Dad for doing that. He showed what it took to be a man and actually step up and provide. So massive. And I'm stoked about that. But you're right, it wasn't all about me. There was Mum and Dad were spread thin across all the kids. And luckily that because of the age gap between me and my sister, the older siblings kind of were out of the house. So it was kind of we've kind of got like the older siblings and the younger siblings.
Right, you kind of have two groups.
And it's kind of been in somewhat different parenting styles. Like they'll look at us and be like, oh, you guys had a car when you were in high school? We never had a car. Like, they're like, oh, you guys got it easy. And we're quite a boisterous family, like a lot of big, probably egos and like quite loud people. And so when we all get together, it's everyone talking over everyone. But we kind of, the lower 3 or the younger 3 kind of like let them have their way. They've got all their inside jokes and look down at us, but we're kind of just like, oh, well, whatever, it is what it is. You can have your say. And
it's funny because even in my family, we do have the 2 older girls and then the young. There's like a little bit of a separation.
Yeah.
But I think it's cool. Like it's fine. Like it's sort of like you're part of a big family, and then there's also like you have like your little departments, that you break into, which is cool too. There's obviously pros of having big families. Being part of a big family, I'm just want to know this like selfishly, but what are some of the cons of being part of a big family from your perspective? Like you said, your parents were spread thin, but did you feel like a big effect in that in terms of they weren't able to kind of always give you that one-on-one? Was that quite a hard thing to navigate?
Definitely. And that's had a massive like impact on my life and whatnot, and my relationship with my younger brother, like, because we've all been super sporty, right from like all of us have, probably done some sort of high performance sport at some point in our lives, and always sport was always massive in our household, and we were always known like the Carters are, we when we do something we do it well, and the relationship with me and my younger brother, he's like the elite, man. Like, he does something and it just smashes it. So there's always a competition between me and him. And so, the mum and dad, like at times it felt like for me, mum and dad were like showing him more time than me. And so I've had to deal with that since, and that like slight misconception, right? Because I'm going to view it from my situation as a kid and I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And then like look at the realities. And then as now being a dad, you can see, I've only got 2 kids, and you can see how like, my youngest, I've got to look after her, but then my oldest is just pulling me. She wants my attention too. So I can see that. But probably the cons or the downfalls of a big family is probably the drama, man. Like there's just, you got so many different people, and love family Christmases and like big events and stuff like that. But there's always something. There's always someone that's got an issue with someone, and working through that and navigating that is always difficult. But that's probably the biggest thing. But I mean, I wouldn't have it any other way. Like, I couldn't anyway. But it's going to be interesting. I always kind of worry like what our Christmases are going to look like with just 2 kids, because I'm used to the big. So navigating that will be it'll be interesting.
So it's pros and cons for everything, right?
Oh,
but
for sure.
But it is kind of fun, and for a bit of chaos, a bit of like I think it's cool to just have like people around and, you know, things are happening and a lot of people around the table.
Yeah.
You know, it's all kind of what we enjoy, right? So, okay, so you grew up there. You were very sporty. So what did you play? What sport?
I played football and athletics were probably my two main things, but then got into a bit of hockey and a little bit of cricket, but not. The hockey and cricket was kind of just more of my mates were playing it, so I played it.
Yeah.
Actually did a right at the hockey thing. I was played football and my mates was captain of the first 11 and he's like, you're good with the ball, so like you can kick a ball, so you should just jump in goal. So I did that and did a season or 2 seasons in goal for the first 11 hockey team. And so
Cool.
that was it. That was interesting, different, but yeah, I was young and fit and agile, so it worked out. And I tried to play it later in my life, and it's just different.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, still play footy, and yeah, that's probably my biggest passion, to be fair, biggest sport thing. And then athletics was probably the one I went furthest in. But
yeah, what did you do? Athletics.
800 and 1500 was the
Cool.
sort of race, but
800 is brutal, eh? It's just like it just kills. I assume even if you're like good at it, it still just kills you. Eh?
it's kind of like a sprint, right? Like
Yeah.
it's a paced sprint because I went down to nationals and that was just hectic. It's different, man. Like in Northland you can be like one of the top runners there, and then you go down to nationals and you're like, far out, these guys are like beasts. And it was eye opening. That was, but yeah, good experience. And I wasn't super in love with it. I just did it. I did it as a means to be better at football or be faster.
Yeah.
And then I ended up being okay at it, and then sort of eventuated from there. But
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I was a sprinter when I was young, and because when if you're fast anyway, you do just the longer distance. You know, the 15.
Yeah.
You know, you do the 800 at least, and 400. I remember the 800 was just like, you just got to be. I was like, how do I do this? And they were just like, well, I just got balls to the wall, and you're gonna die at the end. But like, just it is what it is, and you kind of do that a little bit. You just kind of go, and stay with the pack, and then the second 400 you just go hard.
One of my coaches actually, and I'm trying to get back into running more and more. I mean, every time I just like, I've still got that, I don't know, the base, I guess. But one of my coaches used to always say, like, when you're in a race, it's just like, keep up, relax. And so as I'm running, it's just, that's constantly in my head. I just keep up, relax. And the mentality of it was like, if you're in behind the leader, you just got to stay right on his tail. And then in that after the bend on the last 100, just go give it hell and see what can happen. So
that's a good mentality, actually. Just keep up, relax. You're just kind of reminding yourself not to tense up. Just like, you're all right, you're in it. Yeah. It's just chill and like, but still keep going. You know, it's kind of a good mentality.
It was like a beating drum in my head, and it still is. Even when I'm like running, if I'm like, even just doing like my own little run, I'm the worst for it. Like I will always go, and I'm like, okay, on my watch, right? I've got to be. This is my pace. Got to be at this pace. I was here. I got to be here. Like always been this like, and it's always a competitiveness to myself. It's just can't help it. So.
Yeah, you used to do that thing when you just like run. You're like, if I don't get to that pole in the next 30 seconds, my whole family dies. Just like, you know, it's stuff that goes on in your head as you just keep pushing. Yeah. I'm not a big runner now these days, you know, looking at my, I've been growing sideways, but
I'm starting to do the same. That's why I need to get back into it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so building, like what? So you went to school, big family. Yep. Have you always thought you wanted to get into building, or was your obviously your dad was a butcher / baker? Yeah. You know, is that something that you always knew you wanted to work with your hands? What was the sort of thinking around wanting to go down that path versus like becoming, why not like an accountant or something?
Yeah. No, I didn't actually always want to be a builder. I knew I wanted to be outdoors, doing something outdoors, and I've always had this view, whatever I put my mind to, I could do it. And I still have that, and that's got its own little issues. But I was, the subjects I took in high school was like outdoor education, PE, and obviously maths and English and graphics design. So I was actually, my thing was design. That's what I'm going to get into. And then I hated school. Like I think in my year 13, they brought in a rule where if you're less than 50% attendance, they'd kick you out. And so I was like just on that cusp of 50. and not. But it wasn't that wasn't at school. It was just I signed up to every sporting event possible, like table tennis. I'm there, like just because I didn't want to be in school, but I didn't want to, I guess, jump into the workforce. I didn't know what I wanted to do, so didn't like school. And so when I was coming to the end of it, I was like, I don't know if I want to do architecture because I don't know if I can commit to that much extra study. And then I did 2 years of Bible college, and it was like an internship, and that was down in Hamilton. And once that which was like kind of events planning, was probably my role there. We went around New Zealand running sports events for young adults and teenagers, and like quite a lot of mentoring involved in that as well. And then so out of the 5 boys, 4 of them are builders, and so that's the connection to building. And
Right.
I'd finished that, and I was like, so I was like partway through filling out my application to do the police force because I was like, I'll give that a crack. And then my brother was like, oh, you want to come labour for me for a bit? And I was like, oh yeah, I'll give it a go. I'd done like stuff in the summer holidays with him and stuff, so that was all good. And then did that and didn't look back really. There was times where I was kind of trying to look for something more, but yeah, that was basically what kind of got me.
And how much older is he than you, that brother?
He's the second oldest. I'm so bad.
So he's probably like 10 years older plus.
More.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And so he was running his own building business at the time?
Yeah.
Cool. And he said, come do some labouring.
Yeah. Probably took me on when he didn't have enough work because, man, the time, like when I started my apprenticeship in Whangarei, and I'd be lucky if I did more than 40 hours a week for the time that I was up there. It was a bit of a rude awakening when I moved to Hamilton, and it was a bit of a rat race down there. Like, like minimum 45, but you're doing way more than that. So,
and so when you worked for him, you're doing labouring, and at which point did you transition into fully getting your apprenticeship? Did you end up doing the apprenticeship through him as well?
Yeah. So I started with him, and I think it was about 6 or 8 months I'd been working for him, and he was like, what are you doing? And he could see that I was like interested in it, like enough to know that, I could do an apprenticeship. And he was like, if you want to do an apprenticeship, you can. And so I just signed up. I was actually, when I jumped into him, I said, I might want to do landscaping, because that was kind of what I was thinking. Like, it'd be cool to design backyards and do that.
Yeah.
And he said, well, if you get your ticket, then you've got more options to do more than just like
plants
and maybe the odd retaining wall and small decks and stuff. So I said, that makes sense. Jumped in, and yeah, it was cool. We were mainly doing sort of high-end new builds, and then that was kind of the start. A lot of heaps of learning in that first 6 months to a year with them. And even being on a work site, I was very sheepish, quite quiet, and now I'm on a work site. It's so much different, but it's kind of cool seeing the progression of even apprentices now who are quite quiet and then into that. So because that's the natural progression, right? You start off a little bit sheepish. A lot of them are quite young, but they have to be able to run a site. They have to be able to speak up. If that's wrong, they need to be able to hold people accountable. So
100%. So let's get into that soon. Firstly, tell me, what was then the transition? So how long you got qualified there? How long were you a builder before you decided? And what was the transition period becoming like an educator versus, taking that next step and starting your own business or whatever?
Yeah. So I did probably about 1.5 years in Whangarei, and then I moved to Hamilton, and was with a company for about 6 to 8 months there. We're doing just mainly sort of your GJ Gardeners. I think they've got Anthem Homes down there, and just your housing company stuff, which was good. So I went from slow quality to not the same quality, good quality, not the same, but fast. And so I really learnt good, like fine-tune systems and good practices and stuff like that to try and speed up. And then I went from there, still in Hamilton, to a company who focused on renovations. We did pretty much everything there, from light commercial to new builds to high-end renovations, and that I actually fell in love with that side of it, the problem solving. What got me the transition between, I was actually at a point where I was like, well, what's next for me? And the company I was at, yeah, I wanted, that was when I started looking at the design thing again within that company, but to something that just never really eventuated into anything. So 2020 happened, and that was a big turning point for me. Yeah, and I actually got diagnosed with depression in that year, and so
Wow.
it was a pretty hectic year for me, and it was just one of the things I'm passionate about with apprentices is that there's the apprenticeship is quite high intensity. Like, you start your apprenticeship and you constantly got to meet deadlines, and you got to do that on a daily with the building industry anyway, right? You've got deadlines to meet, projects to complete, and working to high standards. And then once you get qualified, it's what's next: site manager, foreman. So the progression is constantly there. And that was that was how I tracked. I think it took me just over 3 years to do my apprenticeship, and quickly was running jobs, and quickly into a site foreman / project manager of like bigger jobs, but also mainly littler jobs. And it was just quite intense. And you don't get any learning or training along the way. You're just like, oh, this is the title now. This is the van. This is the guys you got to work with. And so the pressure kind of just got to me. And that was it was a hard year. And I like to think I'm quite a high achiever. So I want to be successful. I want to be the best. That's always been my mentality, and do everything I can to do that. And so kind of just got to a point where I just couldn't. And then, yeah, that happened. And then that sort of was around middle of that year. And then between there and the end of the year is when I was kind of like, I need to change. And it was either go out on my own in a state where I didn't feel super okay to. And the industry was also a little bit topsy-turvy with products struggling to get the resources anyway. So I was kind of like, that's a bit of a risk. And I was just looking for a job, and I actually got started with our current competitor. And one of the things I read on the application was, pastoral care, and I was like, well, I can do that. It's the qualification. I've done that, so that I could do this. I honestly felt so confident that I'd get the job and they'd be able to do it. And yeah, went through all the interview processes and got the job, and yeah, enjoyed it since. That was kind of the transition through.
So when you say you got diagnosed with depression, it's always kind of hard. I always kind of don't understand the different terms, because you got like the situational kind of depression, and then you've got like the something where there's like, they say there's like an imbalance in your brain or whatever. So for you, was it like more situational? It was kind of like you kind of hit the wall, you were like burnt out. Was that sort of what it was, or what?
Definitely burnout. And I think I'd say I can't say that buildings caused that, because that's not the fact. That's not truth. I think it was situational that I got to the point of burnout, and that's when I sought help. I've had another period of burnout in my life prior to that anyway. Like, I can remember the day that things changed for me, and it just, yeah, I've always said, like, I've got high highs and low lows, even through high school. Like, that's just always been my personality type, and I just didn't think anything of it. And I was the same, man. I thought, man, depression, anxiety, this is just an airy-fairy thing that we just throw it around. But until it actually happened to me was until I was like, far out, this is, and I've done so much work on myself since, and that's like, yeah, and I've actually gone backwards as well and apologized to guys that were working under me at the time, because, man, I was so focused on being the best foreman, making the most money for the company, that I actually cared less about them than I did about the outcomes. And I was very outcomes task. And it's so easy to be that, right? It's like, stand those walls. The whole job is quite outcome orientated and task orientated, and so it's easy to transition that.
It's also easy to like when you're under such stress, and it's not, when you have to run a project and it has to be done efficiently, and there's not like a lot of a lot of jobs, there's a lot more like fluff periods. You can kind of take it easy, and that's when you have time to pour into the guys a little bit more, and we're taking it slow, and "You all good, mate?" Like, "Oh, if you're feeling a bit, come in a bit later tomorrow if you feel," like there's none of that.
Yeah.
Because it's like go, 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 go. We gotta, if we don't stay on track, this company's losing money. And so when it's fully stressful, I can completely see how you just focused on the task at hand and sort of at the at the risk of not looking after the guys that well. But when it comes back to the conversation around burnout, I've got a lot of friends that have had burnout, and I've had elements of that myself. And what they say is that you're actually getting burnt out way before you realize you're burnt out. Like you get to a point where you hit the wall and you cannot take one more step. You're done.
Yeah.
But the burnout happens like months before that. So what are some of the there's someone listening to this podcast right now that knows exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
What sort of red flags, what triggers, what things should people, or have you noticed, if you I don't know if you have, but when you look back, that you should have been more aware of leading up to that point of no return or no further?
Yeah. It's a hard one, because you're right. It is a cumulative of events and stresses that lead to that. I think the inability to say no was massive for me. It's there's no and that was always our view on with the last company I worked for was there's always a way. There's always something we can do. So it's never a no. It's always, okay, what do we got to do to get that? So that mentality can easily be transitioned into how you live your life. And yeah, that was one thing for me. And probably my partner would say, me saying I'm always tired was a big sign. It's it's not, I'm definitely, you are tired, right? After a full day at work, you're physically tired and physically drained, but to say it every day, constantly, and then, I think signs, because I'm quite a high energy person for the most part. I think signs for me now, or triggers for me now, is struggling to get out of bed is a big one. If I get into that state, and by all means, it's something that I'm constantly working on. Right, I see a counsellor, and I've got things in place still. And this is 4 years ago, to help me be better and to be able to manage and learn about myself. I'm constantly learning about how I handle situations and what my triggers are.
I was just thinking now, do you think, did you say struggling to get out of bed? I get like that, from time to time. So I don't want to get out of bed today. And even what comes with that, it's almost a little bit of shame as well. She's like, man, I'm a freaking loser. Can't even get out of bed today, and it just sort of compounds, how have you learned of a way to kind of manage that, deal with that? What would you, when you start to feel like that now, because you're saying you've worked on yourself a bit more, we never completed, we're never done, we're never there.
Yeah.
But just getting some more some tools to be able to deal with it. When you feel like that now, you're whoa, 3 days in a row, I don't really want to get out of bed. What sort of the first things that you implement?
I think the first things in that aspect that I start thinking through is am I physically tired? Am I actually tired? Because that's okay. It's, sometimes you can actually be physically tired and work through that. And then I start thinking in my head, what are my inner thoughts? Because I think that was one of my biggest things is, right from even when I was in school, brought up in a Christian home, and I would always, repent every night. Oh my gosh, I'm the worst sinner or whatever, and that approach of thinking about my day and my failings transferred into the building industry and even my work, any work that I've done. And so I will think through, okay, what did I do today? I could have done that better. I could have handled that situation better. And my mind is just constantly just firing. And the other side of it is, okay, what do I got to do tomorrow? And so you're constantly firing. And so it's just this. And I actually thought the inner critic, or what my internal thought process was actually good. It was what was making me better. But when I heard or wrote down what I was actually saying to myself, it's man, you're saying you're a bad dad, a bad husband, you're not a good employee. Well, that's not healthy. And one, it's not healthy, but it's also not sustainable. So the next thing I probably try and figure out is what am I saying to myself? And is that true? And if it's not true, I've got to get that out of there because that's not healthy for me, or and I'm not going to get anywhere with that.
Yeah, I think that's a big one, and I definitely relate to that. I think that I think what we get wrong with thoughts is that we think that we, especially like non-logical, non-practical thoughts, are generally not ones that we've created. It's generally ones that get dropped in there from wherever you believe, whatever your belief system is. But I think that, I'm actually a firm believer, and I've thought about this for like the last 4 years, is that no thoughts that come into my head that are non-logical. So obviously a logical thought would be, okay, tomorrow it's a concrete pour, we got to get the guys ready, like that's like a logical thought. It's like these are the logical things we've got to do. Versus as soon as it's non-logical and it gets into like the feeling, something that makes you feel a certain way, like anxiety or stress, like any of those sort of thoughts are thoughts that are dropped there from that it's not thoughts that you've created, and those are generally, you could call it lies, or you could call it like not, it's not actually true or whatever. Those are the thoughts that are generally the ones that sends you down a bad path. I don't know if you realize that.
Yeah.
And even like good and bad, I've realized as well. So it's not just the negative thoughts, so like, oh, you're so lazy, that's a negative thought. But even other thoughts as well. It's like, man, you're so good at this. Everyone thinks you're so great at this. Those are also not great, because those are the ones that give you. So it's designed to, like you say before, it sort of sends you up and down and up and down and up and down, and before you know it, you're just like an emotional roller coaster all day, every day.
And it feels like that too.
Yeah, for sure. And the more I've realized, I can't speak for other people, but the more I've realized for myself is that those thoughts, I just realized like, oh, that's actually that's not me. I didn't create those thoughts, and that's not true. You end up living a bit more even keel, and you don't have those high highs and low lows. Actually, it's just a bit more about being present and a bit more even keel. But we can talk about this forever, and I wanna for the sake of the listeners, let's talk a little bit about your transition, and explain to me the benefit, I guess, now that you're an educator for Builders Academy. What are some of the benefits? The fact that you've come from building, now teaching these young apprentices. There's a benefit in having that background, right?
Massively, like understanding the scope of work, understanding what they're talking about. I hear it all the time about apprentices trying to sort of, I guess, talk the talk, but to guys who don't know what they're talking about. And there's an element of like, there's got to be a confidence in terms of an apprentice being able to communicate. But if they're communicating something good versus something that's not accurate or not true or wrong, and so it's very easy to pull them up on things. And sometimes, and don't get me wrong, apprentices will stump me, and that's fine. And the way I've always approached it is we're all learning, right? Even the big bosses, they're still learning about something. So whether that's how to price better, budget better, whatever it is, or even manage their staff, they're learning something. And our apprentices are the same, and I'm exactly the same. There's a million ways to skin a cat, and they'll often come to me with something I've never seen before, and I love that, because it's just like seeing something done in a different way is like, oh, I'm going to use that. I don't know if that answers.
Yeah, no, that's good. So what's the structure? We get some, obviously we'll have builders listening to this that have been in the game, they understand it. So just quickly, for people looking to maybe get into an apprenticeship, what's the structure of an apprenticeship in today's world, and what are they going to like be learning, and where their confidence level is going to be at each stage?
Yeah, I guess the structure is finding an employer, and then hopefully it's most guys chuck them on a trial, and hopefully you're getting through that trial. I think the biggest thing in that, if you are on a trial, is, do you love this? Because if you don't, man, it's an uphill battle, the whole apprenticeship. You got to want to be there, you got to want to love it. And if you're not, then it's, sometimes it's like pulling teeth. So, but that's kind of the process in terms of like where, we take apprentices come from all parts of life. Sometimes we get a school leaver who's never been on a building site before and is interested, or maybe they did woodwork and they love that. Building and woodwork in a class is quite different, so there is a bit of a transition there. And then sometimes we get, people who've come from university, didn't want to do the degree, and they want to do a trade. There's heaps of different things. So confidence levels are varied within in apprentices throughout the apprenticeship, and someone who's come from another career might be super confident on site in how they talk, but their skills lack. Whereas a young guy might be, quite shy, but have a farming background or something like that, and his skills are good, but he's super shy. So, our approach to each individual has got to be at an individual level. So what we do for one is going to be different for another, and we have to take that approach. If we don't, then we're letting them down, really. So,
can you tell already at the start? You're saying before, like it's like pulling teeth sometimes. Like, could you tell if you like with a first year apprentice? Could you tell if it ain't gonna hit?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes, and again, it comes to that, like, the building industry is a really, it's struggling right now, and it's a very, very interesting place to work in and around. But sometimes it could be a season for that apprentice. So it's not uncommon to have an apprentice who's just struggling for whatever reason, whether it's something going on at home, it could be a inter-work conflict that you just don't know about. And so sometimes we try to navigate our conversations away from the assessment side of things and into how are you going, because you want to if they were really good, a good performer, they were doing their book work, they were turning up, they were performing on site, and now they're not. Something's changed. It's it's a bit of a guessing game at times, and so you sort of probe. And I use my story to try and get stuff out of people, because man, everyone's going through it. I think I read an article the other day. It's like the construction industry is like 25% higher suicide rate than any other industry in New Zealand, that's a massive gap. Like, that's pretty crazy. So it's a real thing. It's a real issue, and we have to be aware of it on site. And we do our own little trainings in-house to help not necessarily solve that, but identify. And we've got support systems as well to help with that. So yeah, it's just trying to figure out. But you're right. Like, you can kind of tell if someone's disengaged, and what we do with that is, again, it's got to be individual. We sometimes get the employer involved, or sometimes their family, depending on what we think is going to best suit that learner.
Yeah. What makes what are the characteristics of like what makes a good, apprentice, first year, whatever, versus not a good apprentice? Like, what do you, if you could like categorize it, itemize it, say these tick boxes generally will make it good for a good apprentice?
Yeah. Honestly, the biggest thing, like, I've got some employers, and I think, employers take a bit of a risk on a first year apprentice, because especially if they're fresh from high school, they like that. Like, most employers like that because they can shape them to be what they want to be. But there's a risk with that, because if they're not interested in it, if they don't love it, then you kind of put a lot of energy into that to get them to a point, and then they will either leave or they'll move to a different career. I honestly, and it's probably been said before, is just eagerness, like just wanting the apprenticeship. If an apprentice turns up on site early, tool belt on, ready to go, asking questions and engaging, and that's just a win. Like, in the first year, we talked a bit before about the learner progress, and how the first few years there's not a whole lot that happens, and in that last few years it does. But what gets them through is just turning up. Like, and oftentimes I'll say to them, and the feedback I'm trying to get from the employers, are they turning up? Because if they're turning up, they're reliable, they're asking questions, they're engaging, and you want to give them more work, give them more opportunities, and that's exciting for them, and it's exciting for me to see, because you're like, sweet, that employer cares. But yeah, I think that's it. They just want it. Got to want it.
Yeah.
And skin in the game too. Like, the fees free and stuff like that. It's been around for a while, and it's now not. So, they've got to put money in into it themselves. And yeah,
Yeah, that does make a difference. And you mentioned before around how it's kind of like it's like a compound interest kind of model, where it's first few years quite flat, and then it's like a sharp uptick in like progress. And what do you have to, you mentioned before, you've done like mentoring a little bit of counseling, through your like Bible college background. Does that come in quite handy when, guys lose, like they've not, because when you're at school, there's constantly like a test and a assignment, where with sometimes year one apprentices, they're just sort of like, mate, am I just going to be freaking, what am I doing here? Am I just sweeping all day? Like they may not, even though they are actually improving, they may not feel like they're progressing. How do you, have you, as those skills come in, to be able to kind of like coach them through that period? And what do you say to them?
I think kind of what you're talking about there, we got this phrase called learner agency, and that's when a learner can take ownership of their apprenticeship. And I think we're trying, what our goal is with that is that by the time they get close to finishing, that they know what's required of them. And I think in those early stages is, with our model and how we do our apprenticeships, the bookwork, they can still be ticking away at stuff. And so we obviously set goals, and it's like, yes, you might be on a broom for a bit, but do you know what the next step is? Are you thinking ahead? Once you complete that, what's your next step? So you're kind of trying to get them to start either problem solving within themselves, because that's a massive part of the industry, or start thinking ahead to the next step. But yeah, the mentoring and coaching side of things definitely comes in hand, because sometimes you've got to come alongside and look, I know it's hard right now, because it is, or you're not getting the opportunities you want because you're quite down low on the pecking order, but it will come. You prove yourself, and you kind of just setting them little goals and trying to bump them up. And because we're coming out so regularly now, you can build a good relationship and good rapport with them to help them to, I don't know, see what their worth on site is. Because just because you're sweeping that little mess there, that's helping the site. Everything we do is to help someone, the qualified guy, or to progress the site in some way, shape or form. So if you take that view, yes, it's just sweeping, but you're helping the site, and we're going to get this build done together as a team.
You've obviously been around, so say 10 years ago versus now, how has apprentices changed and how they approach the job? Obviously 10 years ago would have maybe been like a millennial apprentice. Now it's more like a Gen Z, Zoomers. Like Dan behind the camera there. Still trying to figure Dan out after a year working together. How has the apprentices changed? Are they, what are sort of the pros and cons also of like apprentices in today's world?
It's a tough one, eh? There has been change. I think from when I was doing my apprenticeship, and even some of the apprentices that I was alongside were, significantly younger than me. And so, yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting one. It's definitely changed. I think there's this idea of like the employer owes them something, or that can be an approach that is taken by them, or that they deserve something, or they should be this, that, or the other, opposed to just, man, you're an apprentice. Like I started my apprenticeship with my brothers, so I would give back, and they were my older brothers. I'd give, if they gave me a stick, I'd give it back to them, and learn the hard way that sometimes it's better to just keep your mouth shut. Nowadays, society's changed. What we're trying to achieve in an apprenticeship, and what we want to see, especially from an employer, is that there's a lot of support there. Maybe sometimes too much support, and that we just baby them to the point where we're basically helping them through too much, and at some point they're going to have to be on their own. So there's an element of that. I'm definitely not saying that we go down the track of bullying, because that is nowhere near where we should be, but that was a lot of the scene probably 10, 15 years ago. It was quite a bully mentality. We have come away from that, which is good. But sometimes apprentices think that, they know what's what, and they don't. And that's a risky place to be, because that's when some big mistakes can happen, and also some people can get sort of hurt, whether it's frustration or whatever, or actually physically hurt because they've made a mistake. So
and it also doesn't help the apprentice in the long run either if he's not. It's kind of like almost maybe a good parallel with parenting. Like 30 years ago, parenting was maybe, parents would just give their kid a backhand or something if they're not listening, or what, and then it was too extreme that way. And now parenting's a lot more like, child led and you know what I mean?
Yeah, you see it at daycares as well.
Yeah. And so the kids can just like do whatever, and the parents like, oh, it's just child led, So it's like the pendulum swung too much the other way as well. So I guess, with the apprenticeships that could happen too. It's like, it's not about, locking them in the portaloo anymore and and that sort of stuff it's moved away from that and bullying. But you got to make sure that they also got to like make their way through, and they got to earn their keep and all that sort of stuff.
And I think employers, it's a really hard position for an employer to be, because you don't want to be deemed as a culture where there's bullying, or where you don't want your employees to be scared of you, but you also have to be the authoritative person and sometimes have to call people out on it. And I've got some employers, and I've worked with some employers in the past where it's quite buddy-buddy. So to then transition into that, I'm the boss and you're the apprentice, can get quite tough. And I've been through that too. I've had mates I've worked with and brothers and stuff like that I've worked with. So the lines can get blurred, but it is. Yeah, it's I'd encourage employers to if you set the boundaries of what the role of an apprentice is, and if you set the boundaries of what we do as a company and what we don't, then it's easy to pull people up on. But we're talking about builders who have become business owners, and they don't necessarily have those skills to manage that, or they're just a small business, and to put in those sorts of things into place, it's kind of a little bit hard. So but it's just we work with that. So
I think it's good to just put those boundaries in place. I might have mentioned this before, but I have a friend who's a builder, a business owner, and we were kind of chatting a little while ago, and he has a young apprentice, and the apprentice is like very confident and like very like enthusiastic and good attitude and stuff. But then he would like my friend who's the business owner would go talk to the client and problem solve something, and then the apprentice would just like rock up next to them and then start talking directly to the client. Yeah, maybe we could do this and that, and then he had to be like, mate, get back on the broom or something. And there's it's good that he's so enthusiastic, but you also got to draw those lines, boundaries. It's like but I guess people will figure it out eventually if they'll get so frustrated that they'll eventually draw the line. So so it's up to them. How's it different? I'm always kind of interested when you train apprentices, like say in big cities versus like more in the rural areas. How is that different, and how are those apprentices? Do they end up being more competent in the regions or in the city? In the end of the day,
I don't know. I mean, I've done the training in Hamilton, which is probably, I guess you'd say it's a bigger city, and then obviously in Whangarei, and you go up to like Kaitaia and all that sort of stuff, and you see some of the stuff they're doing. I think one of the big things, and I wouldn't say better or worse, I'd just say one of the big things is scope of work. I think in the cities you see a lot of group housing or commercial stuff. In the like rural areas, you see guys that do everything because that's what they do, from pole sheds to doing their own roofing, their own concrete, because they just, I don't know, that's just how they've always done it, I think. But we are seeing more and more that guys are doing less and less. And it's not just rurally or in the big cities, it's just everywhere. It's just everything's getting subbed out now.
And is that sort of how the construction industry is moving? Like there's a lot more specialization, and like in 20 years from now, is that all-rounded builder that can jump on a digger and pour a slab and do some in situ concrete and that can do more is that in 20 years from now, is that going to be non-existent?
I reckon we're already heading that way, and the United States is very much like that. Australia's massively turning into that as well. So it's only a matter of time, right? We follow suit, so it'll be we're already like that. I think when I was doing some GJs down in Hamilton, you got guys installing the joinery. Most of them are brick and tin tile roofs, so you stand the walls, stand the trusses, and then you kind of come back in to do finishing lines, maybe some interior joinery, but then again that was getting subbed out. The door hardware was all getting checked out, so you're just basically a framer at that point, and then you turn up and you do some finishing lines at the end, and it's done. So it is getting that way. a little bit already.
Is the romantic side of me thinks is that sad? Is that sad?
Oh, that is sad, yeah, because, well, I mean, and I think it's times like these, right, where we're in a place where we're low consents nationwide, going through councils, and work's slowed up quite significantly, and employers are struggling to find work, that guys just have to start doing more and subbing out less. And if you don't have the trained skills through the apprenticeship with that, then it's going to come to another downturn in the market in 10 years' time. And if they don't have the skills to do it, because we've either changed the qualification or they haven't had the scope of work, it gets really tricky because you got people who aren't competent to do that, doing it, and then we're just getting ourselves into a bit of a, it's just it's slippery slope, right?
Yeah. What's sort of the most, because what you do now, like you're training young guys, getting young guys in there, you're seeing their confidence grow, you see them get qualified, and you can, I guess you see a very different young man and woman when they're done versus when they start.
Yeah.
How rewarding is that to kind of be part of that process? And like,
massive. It's like, I mean, it's exciting, right? You always the first, you're not really thinking about it until sort of the end, but that first like meeting with an apprentice when they're signing up, I did that a couple of weeks ago, and he's fresh out of high school, and you can see he's like keen as, doesn't know what's ahead of him, but he's keen. And I think what we've got to try and do is use that energy they've got now, because most people are quite excited about starting something new and trying to keep that going along the way. But when he gets qualified, he's, and he's a little bit cheeky as well. So, you can see the banter between him and the boss already. So you can see he's probably going to do all right. He'll talk the talk, but make sure that he can walk the walk. But yeah, it is exciting seeing them get that certificate. And it's a little bit of a relief for them sometimes. They're just like, it's done. But again, and I think it's been said before, is, it's just the start. So there's still lots of learning to go for these guys. But yeah, it is exciting seeing them day one and oftentimes we don't get to see the day one to the finish, but when you do and work with an apprentice right from the start to the finish, it's pretty rewarding.
Yeah. What are some, and before we kind of go, because I want to talk a little bit about Builders Academy as well, and kind of how you guys are different to some of the other providers out there. But just tell me, what's the biggest misconception do you think these apprentices have when they start versus like the reality? When they come, how did they think it was going to be different to what it really was?
I think probably the biggest misconception is if I turn up and I'm going to get qualified. And it's funny because we turn up to do a sign up, and then we give them the box of books, and they're like, oh, we got to do this. And then it's like, well, you got to fill this one out, and you got to understand this. And I think that's probably the biggest misconception, is that they actually have to put work in to get qualified. Some of them think they can turn up and they'll get qualified, but there's a lot of information that they're not going to learn on site that they need to know to be a qualified builder. I think that's probably the biggest one. And I was probably much of the same. I kind of looked at it and being like, it's a qualification. So when I first started, it's a qualification, so I have to do something. But when I got the books, man, I was super overwhelmed. I was like, and it was different then, and the books were quite old, and I was like, what the heck? Like, where do I start? Do I have to read it? Do I read it all now? Like, you're just like, yeah, it was pretty hectic. So I can understand where they're coming from. We try to break it down and set them specific goals so that they're not overwhelmed, and just be like, it's a start. Little and often is what we often say is, you don't have to do, 5 units between now and the next visit. It's just little and often. You can do half an hour a week, an hour a week. That's going to be more beneficial than just doing a whole bunch at the end.
Yeah. So little and often is a good transition then into how you guys operate at Builders Academy. So talk to me about how often you guys actually come and meet with your apprentices versus some of the other providers out there.
Yeah. So 6 to 8 weeks. That's what we try to meet. And then we're also running night classes fortnightly, depending on where the apprenticeship is. A little bit hard sometimes with the night classes, because obviously, especially like if you think about like the northern region, we've go up to Kirikiri and surrounding areas, and then sometimes down to like Mangawhai and even further. So for those guys to come to the night classes, it can be quite bit of a hard thing for them. So they don't necessarily always go to those, but that's kind of our model at the moment, and great engagement from the employers and the apprentices. It's like regular accountability. If you're seeing them every 6 weeks, we're able to build a relationship with them and the employer, and we can pick up and identify issues quicker, opposed to, say, if that was 3 or 4 months between a visit. If they hadn't done anything in that time, it's, a third of the year's gone before they've progressed, whereas we're 6 to 12 weeks before they're progressing. So we can capture things a lot quickly. And I think the learners like it because, we talked a little bit about learner agency before, and part of our resources are so good for the learner agency. We've gone back to basics with the bookwork. They have to fill out some questions, and all the resources are there for them to sort of work through, and they can put pen to paper. Most learners most builders are tactile, so they want to physically do something and write something or draw something. And even when I'm doing assessment, I'm like drawing a picture or because I'll jump on my phone and Google, this is the detail, but you got to be careful so you don't give them the answers. So our books are quite help with that. And I've actually seen significant growth with learner agency because they know what's required of them to pass a unit, opposed to kind of being like, what is he going to ask me today? Is he going to ask me the same as, so they know what they need to do to pass a unit, and that's been real helpful with the books. So.
Yeah. And then meeting with them more regularly as well means they don't have to learn so much per time when the educator comes out.
Yeah.
And I think that's massive, because having to wait 3 months before you have that conversation, a lot of stuff you got to cram in there.
Yeah, and when I finished the last year of my apprenticeship, I think I was about 23% through, and I got qualified within the year. And I was trying to chew off as many unit standards as I could, and it's a lot to remember. And so coming out more regularly, instead of doing 5 or 6 unit standards, we're doing 1 or 2. And if they don't nail it, it's okay. We'll set them as goals for next time. So it's definitely a good, I wouldn't be here if I didn't believe in it, right? And I've said that to all my employees and all my apprentices. If I didn't believe in it, I couldn't sell it, and I couldn't do it. So I believe that this model is the best for industry, and I believe that what we're doing is making a difference. So
yeah, that's awesome. And just then, finally, from the building business owner's perspective, what characteristics do the ones have that do a great job at supporting their apprentices and sort of helping them through?
I think is just support. And I think they kind of have to buy into the model too. Not necessarily our model, but just the learner engagement. If, the employers that I've worked with that have successful apprentices are the ones that care, and you can see that care through the way that they talk about their apprentice, but also engage with the apprentice on site. And it could be just because we talk about some practical goals that they might need to work on, and sometimes it's attitude, because the apprentice is just, for whatever reason is just not, I don't know, he's not turning up to work or something. So sometimes we'll set those as a goal, but other times it's, actually setting him up a task where he can take the lead and prove competent, or at least be tested to see if he is competent. But the more engaged they are with us, the more the easier the progress happens with the apprentice, and you can see the apprentice buy into it too. One of the big things for me when I was doing my apprenticeship is feedback from my employer. If an employer said I didn't care if I was doing a good job, or I just want to know where I was at. And I think a lot of apprentices get a lot of good buzz from that. Even when we turn up and we're like, yeah, you smashed that unit standard today. And they're like, I didn't think I was going to pass that. But it's no, you smashed it today. You did such a good job. And they constantly need a little bit more reassuring than maybe in the past, but it's good. And I think the employers can be successful with their apprentices when they give that good feedback. Even if it is negative, it's feedback. They can work on it. They can progress to being better, and they can show that they are stepping up in different ways. So
yeah, I think that's great, and just giving the builders that confidence that they back yourself. You're doing well. That's just that little tap on the back. Sometimes is all they need to just get that gets them going for another 8 weeks. You know what I mean? Sometimes.
And I've got a few apprentices who are really close, and the biggest thing is confidence. And it's like, and sometimes it is that, holding the hand a little bit too long. And, so sometimes we'll set goals with the employers like, well, we've got to just let him free, let him fly. He might make some mistakes, but we're never going to know if he's going to be commercially competent until we give him that opportunity. So,
yeah, that's so good, man. We can chat all day. Let's do some rapid fire questions if you're keen.
Yeah.
And then I'll send you on your way. Are you all good with that?
Yeah, sweet.
Cool.
Yes.
Okay. Tell me Paul, what's your favorite tool?
Oh, tool. Jeepers. Said it was rapid fire. It's going to be, could be a long one. I'll probably go multi-tool.
Okay, cool.
Got a lot of functions.
What's the worst on-site injury you've seen?
Man, I've honestly not seen many, which is really good.
That's really good.
Probably the worst one, and it's super cringy. A guy at a planer and talking to him, and he was just revving it up a little bit, and got his pinky and his ring finger just caught. Nothing came off, nothing, just a few plasters, but yeah, that's probably the worst I've seen, and it's just not nice.
I don't know why I asked that question. I don't like blood kind of stuff. What's the most common mistake new apprentices make?
I think it goes back to that misconception thing, is that they don't realise they actually got to do book work. And it's not necessarily a mistake, it's just more of a misconception, I think.
Yeah. These days, apprentices are A, soft, B, open-minded, C, hard workers, or D, innovators.
We'll go B and C.
B and C?
Yeah.
Open-minded, hard workers?
Innovators.
Oh, innovators. Cool.
Yeah.
Coffee or energy drink?
Coffee.
EV or petrol head?
Go petrol.
Rock or hip-hop?
I like all music, so I'll go hip-hop.
Hip-hop. Jock or hippie?
Oh, jock.
What's your most used emoji? You have to be honest.
Ooh. Man, this is bad. I'm probably just a winky face. That'd be it, or a smiley face.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't even be the emoji. It's just the actual physical.
Oh wow. Okay, you're like a boomer.
Yeah, I know. It's bad.
Are you an extrovert or introvert?
Introverted extrovert.
Yeah, makes sense. Rugby union or rugby league?
Probably neither, but I'll go union over league.
Okay, but you're more football.
Yeah.
UFC or F1?
UFC.
What's your favourite hobby?
Oh, got to be footy. Football. Love it too much.
Wine or beer?
Ooh, I'm going to go wine at the moment. Yeah.
Love it. You are a boomer. Makita, DeWalt or Milwaukee?
If I could go back, I'd go Makita, but I'm Milwaukee.
What's the last piece of advice you can give to an apprentice coming through?
Just want it. Really want it. And if you do that, you'll go far.
Awesome. Perfect way to end it. Last question. Paul, did you have fun?
Of course, always. I love chatting about building. I'm super passionate about the industry, so yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on, man. I appreciate it. I love your passion. We could talk for a lot longer, but we run out of time. Thanks for coming on. Have a great rest of your day.
Awesome. Cheers, man.
See ya.
Appreciate that.